Welcome Aries to your in-depth monthly forecast for November 2025. I'm going to share with you briefly some of the big themes for your sign, then on screen your event chart right at the beginning of November, which always provides an influential backdrop. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it to continue to thrive and do so now. We have found that 50% or more of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. And also, if you've yet to watch your year 2026 deep dive Aries video, please see the link beneath this one. Now, your ruler Mars is right at the heart of the cosmic action this month, and in a very exciting way, Aries. Mars starts the month in dignity in the other zodiac sign that he influences of Scorpio, which can be very much to do with deep desires, very passionate. Can also be a very evocative energies for you personally when it comes to improving your long-term finances. But if you're wanting to bring extra intimacy and action and excitement to your love life, well, Mars certainly here can help. But Mars is forging at the very start of this month a wonderful alliance to Saturn and Neptune in the more psychological part of your scope, but also Jupiter, the planet of hope, in a very healing, homely part of your chart too. So whatever it is that you aspire to as you go into this month, tuning in to your sixth sense is going to guide you marvellously well. But also Mars is going to be moving on the fourth Aries into your sister fire sign of Sagittarius, which is really exciting. I can't wait to share that with you. I think Mars is going to have a radical impact in a very positive way. Now, of course, we do have two lunations in terms of the full and new moon, as usual, and they are going to be asking you to think about your resources, whether it's your immediate costs and expenditure or it is the long-term plan or those that you share with others. But later in the month, with Mercury and Jupiter going into retrograde, anything to do with travel is going to require some care. But then the Sun plays catch up with Mars and also with Mercury moving into the sign of Sagittarius. So that's an opportunity to really be much more dynamic and adventurous as the month goes on. So just before I share your chart on the screen at the start of the month, if you've yet to order your unique personal forecast for year 2026, you can do so now and get the rest of this year free. You'll also get your life roadmap reports, which gives searing insights into the patterns that are played out in your life journey so far and how you can use a greater knowledge of that to steer your future moves along with those forecast transits. And you'll get your free gift of your general love and Chinese and Indian written forecasts for the year ahead, but the overall package is 30% off. Please see below for more. So Aries, on the screen now is your event chart right at the beginning of the month. A big cluster of energy in the 12th house. The 12th house can be about deep reflection, can be about healing, can also, with Saturn in the mix, be about coming to terms with some things that have occurred over a long period of time. It depends on how old you are, but Saturn is in culmination of a 29.5-year journey, which finishes on the 14th of February. So it's urging you in a way not to be quite so much in the present, not to be so focused on taking immediate action, but actually understanding what it all means. But that energy, that more reflective energy, can be linked to the past, is competing with the energy of Pluto, which is very much to do with your future, your connections to others, your friendships, and that's linking very productively to Mercury and Uranus at the start of this month. Now, because Mercury is detrimented in Sagittarius, it can make quick decisions, and the electric energies of Uranus can turn the volume up on that. But I feel that you can use them to be very open-minded about some of your moves, particularly around your work, for example. But just be conscious of the position of Chiron. the so-called wounded healer, which has been asking you over the last few years to work on your sense of identity. Now that's in an opposition with Venus, the planet of relating and peace, in one of its favourite locations. It's at home in the sign of Libra, domiciled. But just be conscious that Venus is in a jarring link with Saturn. So however much you're trying to work on a relationship in the present, if your past experiences, perhaps with the person you're with, or perhaps with someone who you are no longer with, but their attitudes and the way they word to you has left some kind of marker, I feel that what Venus is asking you to do is just tune into that inner world. The more you're tuned into your inner world as you come into this month, despite that exciting blend of energies, the better you're going to do. Yet, you are going to have a big opportunity on the 4th, as early as the 4th, to be much more dynamic, because Mars moves into Sagittarius, and for the following just over 6 weeks, a fantastic chance for you to demonstrate precisely those more exciting and thrusting and courageous moves that you're well known for. But even if you do try to break out in some ways, I feel for some individual realms, it can be a need to break away from something that's not working. So it all depends on your unique situation, whether it's a job that's draining you too much, whether it's setting firmer boundaries within your family, whether the kids take you too much for granted if you have children when it comes to the domestic chores, if you're not really feeding your soul in terms of going away for weekends of rest or relaxation, or just having a stroll in nature, or reading a good book, or watching some self-help or personal development videos, just giving yourself that healing time. What Mars can do is ask you to just create the space to then go back to that more emotional dimension. But it just depends on your unique situation at the current time. Because for some people, that quincunx between Venus and Saturn could mean that in an existing relationship, some issues could come up this month that need to come up. They need to be scrutinized, whether it's your approach, the other person's approach, because if they can come to the surface and be released, that's going to be very valuable. And I think Mars moving into Sagittarius will give you that more buccaneering energy that you're so well known for, but which has been quite hard to tune into at times since Saturn moved into the sign of Pisces in March 2023. So I think it blunted that more dynamic, exciting part of your personality. But it's all for a big reason, because once Saturn returns back into the sign of Aries on the 14th of February, merges with Neptune, which returns at the end of January, you really do begin a new epoch. So that takes us to the 5th, that full moon in Taurus. Moon loves being in Taurus, exalted here, but also in a beautiful link with the North Node. If you are thinking about some spending decisions, or you're discussing shared finances, make sure that the information that is coming up for you in terms of your instincts, you do integrate into your decision. But one of the things that can happen with a second 8th house full moon is if you have been a bit attached to someone, or perhaps a lifestyle choice, maybe too much sugar, too much caffeine, maybe being a little bit lacking in motivation in the evenings, and watching a lot of telly, which is nothing wrong with that. But if in some ways you've been a bit attached to something that keeps you a bit comfortable but doesn't push you, that's a full moon with Mars just having moved into Sagittarius, which is asking you to think about what you could break free from again. But in a more practical way, is it a chance to perhaps find a better balance between the ins and outgoings when it comes to your finances? But the 6th sees Venus move from that diplomatic and harmonizing journey of 4 weeks through the sign of Libra and move into the deep and passionate sign of Scorpio. If you have been getting on well with someone and you want to up the excitement factor when it comes to getting up close and personal, Venus here will definitely help you. But Venus here can also see some financial fortune come to you, but it may not be to do with your personal finances. It may be a partner has some kind of uplift. But Venus also squares to Pluto. If there is someone in your circle that is just creeping up on your senses, you can become much more conscious of them over the next 3 or 4 days for sure. It could go all the way to actually wanting to get very, very close. But when Venus and Pluto are in a square, we need to be aware that Pluto can hide people's motivations. Venus can be very charming, of course, very coquettish, so people can use flattery in order to get what they want, whether it's around a business or financial situation, or it is around sex. So just be conscious of that. But on the 8th, Uranus does return back to Taurus, and I think you would agree that generally over the last 7 years, your finances may have been somewhat unpredictable. There could be a bit more of that to come, frankly, through to the 26th of April. But I think also because of all the knowledge and experience you've gained, this is more like making use of the more innovative way Uranus can work, because the disruptive part, which might not be completely at an end, but generally speaking, I think you've had quite a lot of choppiness, but all the lessons you've learned from that, because basically Uranus is about knowledge or higher truth. And for sure, Uranus is in its full in the sign of Taurus. It's not a great position for it to be, but I think you can use all the knowledge you've gained in a very productive way by embracing some fresh approaches, particularly to how you earn money or use the resources you do have. But on the 9th, Mercury does go retrograde, but it was in shadow from the 21st of October. And in the sign of Sagittarius, if you are thinking about applying for a course, you're thinking in some ways about a holiday, a vacation, about how you can make your life more exciting or stimulating, you can use the Mercury retrograde in a productive way. But of course, Mercury does require us to be very concentrated on details, and in the sign of Sagittarius, there can be a resistance to that because of a desire to enjoy the excitement and the adventure very quickly. So being very careful if you are going anywhere, booking any tickets, buying anything online. If you're thinking about a new mode of transport, like buying a vehicle, then I wouldn't say you shouldn't do it, because Mercury retrogrades in total take about 9 to 10 weeks, including the pre and post retrograde shadows. We have at least 3 a year. So are we going to not do anything for 30 weeks of the year because of Mercury retrograde? I have some people write to me and say, well, I'd like to have a reading with you, but I need to wait until after Mercury retrograde. Well, that's fine, but actually Mercury retrograde would be the perfect time to have an astrology reading, because that's when you're going to dig down and get more knowledge. So I think it's a time to not certainly not be too frivolous. And particularly if you're discussing something like, say, an application for a visitor's visa to a country, or you need to order a passport, or you are thinking about applying for a course, then do consider all the details very carefully. But Jupiter going retrograde on the 11th, which of course ironically is the ruler of Sagittarius, that's going to be retracing its steps through to March the 11th, and that is around where you live, who you live with, and how. If you haven't been quite enjoying the emotional dimension, or there have been some headwinds around your family life, perhaps people have needed a lot of your support. If you live in an environment where it doesn't quite work for you, you might have become more conscious of that, but the Jupiter retrograde can turn up the volume somewhat, because of course it is the biggest planet outside the Sun. It is the kingmaker, so it can make us have big desires, but I think it's asking you to work with the energy of Saturn. So Saturn is obviously more conservative, Jupiter is much more much more gregarious and positive, but finding a balance between those two areas, despite the retrograde, could be very valuable. And again, I think it is about really tuning into that inner world. So in some ways, Mars moving into Sagittarius urges you to be very dynamic in a very Aries way, but I think this is a month which does ask you to keep working on your inner world. Then on the 12th, we do have a conjunction between Mercury and Mars in Sagittarius. That's a very exciting conjunction, and it could give you a desire to just do something completely off the cuff. Again, very Aries-like. Have the hunch, do it, take action. Mars here, I think, can be very good, but of course Mercury is retrograde. So if you're too hasty, that could be an issue. But then on the 19th, Mercury inverts into Scorpio, where of course it was before. If from the full moon, which happened on the 5th, you do need to revisit something to do with your finances, Mercury actually in the retrograde in Scorpio could be a great asset. Although it may be frustrating if you're waiting for a payout, a loan application, some news on a mortgage, or the conveyancing on a property, and it may seem to be going too slow, I feel Mercury here can give you the celestial tools to unpick what's going on, not least because on the 20th we have a new moon in the sign of Scorpio, and that's in a beautiful link with Jupiter and Saturn. So we have two lunations this month which are blessed by energies in Pisces. So even if you wanted to just be very much in the moment, do things that are exciting, different, stimulating, daring, whether you're going to do a parachute jump for charity, abseil down the side of a hospital to raise funds for a ward, or some machinery there, those kind of go-getting things can be part of it, but it all needs to be steered by the inner, more psychological domain of your situation. But then on the 22nd, if you do want to or feel able to move on from that inner reflection and push outwards, the link between the Sun and Pluto particularly is very, very positive indeed. So if there are people, for example, that you can align to that share your love of sports, teams, travel, perhaps doing things that are a bit more physically active, you can certainly connect with them at that time. But on the 28th, with Saturn ending its 5-month retrograde, particularly I feel since the 1st of September, if things have felt very heavy and bogged down around, maybe genuine reflection towards your past, if there has been sadnesses that have been coming up that you've been working through, Saturn going direct is very helpful. 29th sees Mercury go direct, but in Scorpio. So I think together with the new moon, which occurs on the 20th, you could start to get the solution if you're looking for a financial plan or an entrepreneurial project to develop. That's going to be very helpful. If you're wanting to collaborate with someone, there can be some green lights towards the end of this month. And then Venus moves to join up with the Sun in the sign of Sagittarius as the month comes to a close. So intriguingly, with that very expansive, exciting, fiery energy of Sagittarius competing with a whole lot of watery energy. We know when we put water on a fire, it can actually extinguish the flame. But I don't think that's going to happen for you this month. I think what you're being asked to do is just give yourself permission to work on some vulnerabilities, some concerns, some anxieties, some issues from your past. Maybe you will want to perhaps bring something to an end that doesn't really give you much satisfaction anymore. And remember, that doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. You may just feel that there is a sense that you're in a big cycle that's tying up loose ends but preparing you for a new beginning. And it just depends how far you're through the appraisal period, the reappraisal period I should say, of that long period of Saturn moving through the sky. It does come to an end formally on the 14th of February, because of course we had the brief visit from the 25th of May to the 1st of September into your sign. And I feel that if you're if you've worked really hard on that, then this month definitely offers opportunity to be much more dynamic and on the front foot. So you can still use that fire, that flame, that progression, but who you're connected to and how you're going to fund whatever it is you want to do are going to be very important. If you're in simpatico within yourself and the people around you in a very, very positive way, this is a month when you can make loads of progress. If you're not so far into the process, that's absolutely fine. None of us ever really gets to the end of the journey, in the sense that we never stop learning. We always have an opportunity to evolve, and certainly that link between the Sun and Pluto gives you a great chance on the 22nd to embrace that. But if you do feel a bit stuck or you're not sure, if you can reach out to someone to help you to work your way through some issues that may be stuck, that could be very liberating. So I feel that liberation is there, but before the liberation manifests itself, there needs to be a proper awareness of where you have been and perhaps the things that you're not quite so sure of, or where there's still hurt and pain. And if that can be released, then you can really hurtle forwards in the most brilliant and wonderful of ways. Please check out your year 2026 Deep Dive Aries forecast by seeing the link beneath this video. Have a great November, take care and goodbye.